Hi, I'm Van, the founder of COHO. In this webinar, we're going to step through what to do after you've had a successful viewing and you want to bring that person into one of your properties. We'll do that using COHO's onboarding feature. You can start an onboarding simply by clicking on the onboarding in the side navigation. From here, you'll click onboard new applicant. We will create a fake person for the purpose of this video. And this will just be a person moving into a room in a property. So you enter the tenant's name and then click continue. If you do have multiple tenants, you can add another, and that is what you do if you were adding a couple to a room. You would use a different process if you're adding a group of students, but that will be covered later on. Next, you select the property and the room that's available. From here, you enter the dates that you think that the tenancy is going to take place. These can always be changeable later on. You enter the deposit amount, and for this we will enter the rent as 600 a month, and then set the deposit. Then you will select what the bills are. For this one, we're going to say the bills are included, and we are going to manage the rent schedule inside COHO, which is the most common option used. We are going to say that there isn't a guarantor required at this point, but that can always change later on. We are going to request a holding fee for the room, which it will default at the maximum amount. And we're going to use the existing payment instructions that we've already set up. But here you can always create new instructions, and these will be saved with the onboarding. Here you're able to select whether you include additional terms. These are mentioned here, such as deadline for agreement. You can also include a draft copy of the tenancy agreement. As we don't have one uploaded at the moment, we can't select one. And you can add additional terms and conditions. Here is where you might put something like a GDPR policy or other documents that you want them to accept before they take tenancy. We are also going to ask the applicant to fill in an application form. We have some current ones that are already there, but we're going to create a new one and call it basic application form. These are the questions that must be asked, but we're also going to ask their date of birth, gender, the current address, and we're going to ask for proof of identification, as well as bankruptcy, CCJs and criminal record. You can also ask employment information and past landlords. And in this case, actually, I think we will ask about those things. If there are any additional things you want to ask, you can here, such as why do you want to move into the shared house? You can also include additional files during the application process if they need to refer to them, or you need them to download something. At this point, we're not sure whether we're going to carry out referencing, so we'll put no/not sure. We aren't going to select a custom onboarding workflow, but check our other videos for what you can do with workflows, as they can be powerful additions alongside the onboarding process. At this point, we're going to submit the onboarding. Now we have a new onboarding. You can see here that this is assigned to me, or you, as it says. Another user coming into the onboarding will see the things that are by default theirs and unassigned. You can always change this to all and see everything. The tenant will get a notification, and we can see here that this onboarding is now waiting for the person to join COHO, of which you can resend the invite if they need it, or you can provide them a direct link to get access. Currently, you can see that we're waiting on the deposit to be paid and the application form. Now we're going to switch over to the applicant side of things. As an applicant, I have received a text message as well as an email asking me to begin the tenancy. The email address that you've entered will be pre-entered, and they will be asked just to add a password to continue with the process. They'll be asked to fill in their name and their birth date, as well as their gender, which they can choose not to say, and optionally they can add a photograph. COHO then asks if they are willing to share some information about themselves that will be shared with future applicants to help find like-minded people, as this is a shared house. We're going to say that's fine, and we're going to fill in a bit about ourselves. Now, I don't have time to fill in about me, so I'm going to skip over that, but I am happy to say that I like games, nature, video games, and quiet nights. At that point, that's all the tenant needs to do to get their COHO account, and that latter half was completely skippable if they didn't want to do that. They'll then be introduced to their own onboarding screen where they can see exactly what is required of them. So here we can see they have an action to reserve the room. This is asking them to pay the amount that is set. At this point, the applicant will click to pay a holding fee where they'll be provided the details of the property, the payment reference to make, and the instructions of what to do. They will then go to their bank, make that payment, and click confirm payment. They can also see that there is an application form to fill in, so they will provide the requested information. As our application form asks for the address, we're going to enter that now. We're also going to enter our identification information. We're answering the questions that we have had asked of us, and we're going to say that we're employed with an annual income of 28,000. Now it's going to ask the additional questions that we have requested. And then they'll be asked if they want to add any other information. This can be used for if you want them to upload certain things to the application form that we don't ask for in questions. You can add a question that says, please upload the following information at the end of the form. Type OK to continue. They're going to then consent to any references and checks, and that they are providing true information. At this point, the tenant's onboarding area is completed for now. But if they have any questions, they can click inside here and say, hi. They also have access to their own message center where they can see this information as well. We're now going to go back to the manager's side where we can see that now there is an action to complete because the holding deposit and the application form have now been completed. If we click into this, we can see what has happened. At this point, we would check in our bank account and ensure that the payment's there, and we can then confirm receipt of this deposit. We will use this opportunity to set the room as unavailable, and we will create a payment record of £138.46. Now, if you're using open banking to track your payments, you may decide that you don't want to create a payment and to let that happen off the back of the open banking payment being spotted and then reconciled against the expected holding deposit. Unchecking this box will allow you to continue past the holding fee stage, but there will still be an outstanding payment expected to be made, which will later be reconciled by the finance team using that panel. But for now, we'll mark that as paid and we'll confirm receipt. If we look into the applicant's COHO page specifically, we can now look at the rent collection panel, and we can see that there is a holding deposit that's been asked for and a holding deposit that has been paid. This second payment record would not be visible if we hadn't chosen to create the payment. Now we can look at the application form. Here we can review it. We can look at the information that's been provided as well as the document. If there is a manager information here, what we can do is choose to do an external email. Maybe we want to validate that this information is correct. It will pre-fill the information about the tenant, the person who it's going to go to. And then if we have a message template, such as employment reference check, we can select that. Otherwise we can create one of those. But that will be covered in a different video. And then we can set a reply to address and a CC address if we want to. And we can send that email. But for now, we're not going to do that. Now we are happy that we want to proceed with this applicant. So we're going to click Accept Application Form. At this point, we've decided that perhaps we do want to carry out a reference. So we're going to click to add that and require referencing be carried out. COHO has partnered with Advance Rent, which is probably the leading reference provider in the country. A reference can be carried out on COHO for £16.50, and that will mean that it will go straight to Advance Rent. They'll carry out all of the checks that they do, which you can see here, and then they'll send the answers and the results straight back into COHO with absolutely no need for you to copy anything across. But if you don't want to use that, you can carry out your own reference, which you can start it here. As you're carrying out your own reference, there's still an action for you to continue with the onboarding. So let's say in this situation, we've carried out a reference and we've found that the affordability isn't quite right. So at this point, we're going to provide a result saying that the person has failed referencing for us, but we're happy with them as a tenant, but we are going to require a guarantor, at which point we're going to select that we require a guarantor. Now we are going to request the guarantor details from this tenant. This will then go back to the tenant and require them to enter their guarantor details, which we'll look at now. Back inside the tenants portal, we can see that they have had a notification to provide guarantor details. This will also be sent to them through the app if they have downloaded it or over email. They can see that there is an action required, and they can also see that the room is reserved and the application form stage is completed, and now they just have to provide their own guarantor details. After they have completed the guarantor details, it's back to waiting while the manager carries out the reference. Back over in the manager's portal, we can see that there is now information added, and we can start the guarantor reference internally. But now we're happy with the guarantor, so we're going to provide a result that it's passed. We can upload any files here and we can submit the results. And now we're going to accept the reference and continue. You can add any notes that you have about this, but we're just going to continue through. The next stage of the onboarding is the tenancy agreement and the move-in monies. The first thing that we need to do is to generate the rent schedule. We're going to say that rent is going to be taken on the first day of the month, and we're going to take it by bank transfer, and COHO is going to provide a payment reference for you. Obviously, this can always be changed to something that you prefer. Now, we are going to automatically generate rent in a periodic tenancy. What that means is after the tenancy goes past the fixed term, if fixed terms are still available, it will automatically generate rent up to 2 months ahead of time without you having to go in and add more. We're going to generate the rent from the start, and we're not going to calculate a pro-rata final date, as this is going to be a periodic tenancy. So we're going to generate the rent, and we can see here that it's created a record to cover until the end of the month, followed by £600 a month afterwards. And at this, we're going to save. Now we're going to look at the move-in monies. We're going to set the move-in monies that we want the first part of this month, followed by all of next month's payment, which is the first full month. These two are included by default. And then we're going to include the amount that we want for a deposit, and we're going to subtract the holding fee, giving us a total amount of £1,230.96. If you want, you can add any additional rents and you can change the first rent payments. If you didn't want to take any rent up front, if you were arranging this tenancy 9 months ahead, you could simply uncheck these rents, and that will just allow you to take the amount for the deposit, which can then be registered. But in this case, we're going to take the rent. We're also now going to create our tenancy agreement. As I mentioned at the start, the tenancy agreement is, they can be added ahead of time, but we haven't got one in the system right now. If we wanted to, we can click on this cog up here and we can add our own template. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. I'm going to add a new template. I'm going to call it Standard Tenancy Agreement. It's going to be available to all properties. So I'm not going to select a property, and it's going to be available to all rental types. I am uploading a tenancy agreement merge fields document. Now this is a document that you can find here. This holds every single field that you can put into your docx tenancy agreement to be replaced with information about the specific tenancy. For example, if you had this tenancy is between COHO applicant full name and the agency name, then it will replace the full name. There are quite a lot of fields that you can use, and you should take the time ahead of time to set up your COHO tenancy agreement. I'm going to add that file to here so you can see that those have actually gotten converted. You can also, when creating a template, add any additional files. Here could be things that you want to also send, such as GDPR policy might be another one, or any other information that you want them to not only receive but also to sign against, that you can evidence that they've received it. So I'm going to add that now. Going back into the tenancy agreement, we can now create a tenancy agreement. You have different options here. You can choose to use COHO's own built-in e-signature, or you can go with a document that's already signed. This is if you've had it signed in person, perhaps, or you've had it signed using some other signing software like Signable or DocuSign, or a wet signature, which lets the tenant download the document, sign it, and re-upload it. But for the ease, we're going to choose a COHO e-signature. It's going to pre-fill all the information that it has known from the onboarding so far, such as the rent, including bills, deposit, etc. It recognises that the guarantor is already set up. Now we can choose what we want the guarantor to sign. We can get them to also sign the tenancy agreement and nothing else, or we can get them to sign a guarantor agreement, or we can have it handled externally, which means you will just accept that that's already signed and the guarantor doesn't need to sign within COHO. For this, we're going to ask the guarantor to sign a guarantor agreement, and we are also going to choose a COHO e-signature. But again, you can have an already signed document if you've done it elsewhere. Here we're going to enter the guarantor information, but again, it's pre-filled from the things we already know. At this point, we're going to choose whether we're going to choose to create a new agreement or we're going to use a template. And we're going to use a template, which is the one that we've just created. As you will probably already know, COHO brings in all the prescribed information that needs to be sent as part of onboarding a new tenant, such as bringing in the EICR, the EPC and the gas safety certificate, the HMO license, and the very latest how to rent guide. All of these are added that the tenant has to confirm against when they're e-signing. We're going to click to review the mail merge tags. Now this is going to give us a view of the final contract that's going to go out to a tenant. Now as you can see, all of those tags that were entered have now been replaced with the information we have about the property, as you can see on this left hand column. So we're going to acknowledge that we've reviewed it, and we're going to send that over to the tenant. Over on the tenant side of things, we can see again that now there is a tenancy agreement to sign and there is moving monies to be paid. This is what it looks like when a tenant signs a tenancy agreement. They will first be presented the tenancy agreement itself, where they can view it. They can download it, and when they're happy, they can continue. They will then be shown all of the certificates that they need to acknowledge. If they try to skip past it, it won't work. So from here they can view the certificates and they can acknowledge. They can download any of them as they go, but this gives you that guarantee that it's all been seen. Now we are required to confirm the identity of the tenant, which we're going to do in this case by email. The tenant will get an email and then they can enter the verification code and confirm. At this point they'll be asked to confirm the forename and surname that they're signing against and sign the document. Similar to the holding fee, they're also asked to pay the move-in monies. So we can see here the breakdown that much money has been requested and the payment is to be made by today. It will tell you the breakdown that this amount includes rent of that much, a deposit of that much, minus the holding fee, along with the instructions on how to pay. I've gone into my bank and I've made that payment, so I'm going to mark it as paid. Now we can see that the tenant is just waiting, and again here's the history of everything that's happened. Over in the manager's side, we can now see that we have an action to acknowledge the move-in monies, which we won't yet do because we are still waiting on the tenancy agreement. Now we can see that although Michael, the applicant, has signed, we are currently still waiting on the guarantor to sign. Now the guarantor will be sent an SMS to do this. But if they are not able to locate the SMS and the email, you can provide them through a known means of communication with a link to do it immediately. The guarantor has now received a text message and an email with the information to sign it and has been given the link directly from you. From here it opens on their page with information on what they have to do and asks them to confirm their identity by putting in the phone number. We then know who they are and we show them the contract that they're agreeing to. So we can see here that the contract for them is this, and they can also get sight of the original tenancy agreement that they're guaranteeing. From here, we're going to ask them to confirm their identity via email. And we're also going to need them to confirm their identity via SMS. Here they'll be able to sign the tenancy agreement themselves as well. And then their side is done. So now going back to the manager's dashboard, we can see that there is now a tenancy agreement to sign. And clicking into that, we can see that the tenancy agreement has been signed and it's now just for the manager to confirm. So we will view the signed agreement so we can see that everything's been acknowledged. The applicant has signed it. There's the guarantor's agreement. That's now been signed. And we're going to despite the smiley faces, we're going to continue with the onboarding. We're going to choose to sign it on behalf of another person because this property is in fact managed on behalf of Raymond James. So we're going to sign on behalf of Raymond. We're going to verify this through SMS. All of these verifications are in fact required by legislation for e-signing. We're going to confirm our identity and start marketing the room. Now there is the moving monies part. Here we will confirm our receipt and we will create a payment record similar to what we did before and continue. Now COHO has a really good integration with Tenancy Deposit Scheme, TDS. If you have API credentials, you can enter them in the settings panel of the onboarding. To get these, you have to go to the API inquiries. If you're a landlord, then you can use COHO's own account to do these, and you'll be given access to view your deposits through it. By using our TDS integration, you will be able to have a single click to register that deposit and be presented with a payment reference and payment details to make the payment. When you make the payment, TDS will detect that and COHO will pick up that response and automatically serve the deposit directly to, the deposit prescribed information and the deposit certificate directly to the tenants. As this isn't set up on this account, we are unable to do that. So we're going to close that away. Now the final stage of onboarding is the follow-up stage. So we can see here that Michael is now in the follow-up stage. And this is all the things that you need to do as part of mopping up the onboarding. We need to provide Michael with moving details. So we're going to create new instructions. You might want to be a bit more specific than that. But you can set the instructions there and then you can set a follow-up date. Now this is a date that you will be alerted by COHO to get back in touch. You don't have to set this, but this can just allow you to follow up with them to make sure that their move went smoothly. We can see now the next follow-up is due to happen at the end of the month. Now we can upload and send an inventory over. We're also told that we need to complete the right to rent check and we need to register the deposit. If you're using the TDS, you can click to protect the deposit there, but otherwise, if you've done it elsewhere, you can click to add a deposit record, select the scheme that you've used and upload any information. And you can also upload information to be visible to the tenant and just privately. And then we're going to tick to serve this information to the tenant via email. So now we know that that deposit record is added. We can add the right to rent checks. Now during the application form, we took identification that we felt that was sufficient. We can go back to that and we can pick that information up and we can add it into here. Now a check is required because it's a standard tenancy, and this was a British passport and it's valid for a few years' time. And it has passed the formal check because I went and saw it in person. And now I'm going to upload that, save the document, and it is accepted with unlimited stay. Now, a mistake some people make is because they know they're British, they don't do the right to rent because they have seen a passport. It's still really worthwhile adding that right to rent check to COHO, because if somebody comes along and asks for evidence, you then have a place that you can see that that's done. And we need to upload and send an inventory. If we go to the property itself on COHO and we go to the inventory builder, we can add a new template that's called room inventory. and we're going to specifically put this one for room E. So we're going to set it as today. And here we're going to have bed condition is new, and then we can include any pictures of the bed that we want as well. Through here you can go down and add them all. Then you can add separate sections for ensuite, any other space that that person specifically has access to, and then click create. Once that inventory is created, we can view it and we can then generate a PDF, and that will let us see what that inventory includes. And in this case, it's a bed of the condition new, and here's a picture. Going back to our onboarding, we can then see that we want to add an inventory. This is the date completed, and we're going to add it from this template, and we're going to send that through COHO using our inventory check-in template, which says find your inventory attached here. Now that is a template that you can create yourself by clicking the plus, and now we know that we have sent that inventory on. And at this point, although we have a next follow-up date due, we can now choose to finish and close the onboarding and not do that follow-up, or we can leave it in the follow-up step until that alert comes back up and we feel that we have fully closed off the onboarding. Now, throughout this process, we've seen that all of these things that are done are tracked inside the history, and within this can also be a place to add additional information. And with the completion of the onboarding, all of that information is now nicely put in the correct areas of this tenant's area. We can see the guarantor information. We can see all of the information we collected. We can also expand this panel and view the final stage of the onboarding. So we can go back and look at the application form, the holding deposit. We can look at the tenancy agreement and see what's been signed. When a tenancy agreement is signed in COHO, it will do two things. First of all, it will create a e-signed tenancy agreement receipt. This receipt will contain all of the information that will be needed in court to prove signing of a tenancy agreement. It will include all of the files and the fingerprint of the files to show that they haven't been changed, as well as the signatures and the location it's been confirmed by, as well as information on the how to rent guide that's been served. Additionally, it will contain an executed tenancy agreement, which includes a final page of the tenancy agreement, which is signed by each person. We don't overlay the signatures onto the agreement themselves. Instead, we opt to add a page at the end of the document to ensure that the format is exactly as required. We can look at the right to rent. We can see that information has all been added. We can look at the rent collection, and we can see that there was a holding deposit that's now been redirected, that the deposit's been paid, and that there has been a payment that's gone towards the next two rents. And we can look at the inventory and see that it was sent, as well as going straight to the conversation, where we can see and send additional messages about this. If you're interested in onboarding a group of students, there are some small tweaks that need to happen as part of the onboarding process. Firstly, you would follow all of the standard steps with onboarding the tenants one by one to the specific rooms. Now, if you don't care about what room they're going to be moving in, just assign them randomly. It doesn't matter. You might also opt to only have one of the tenants have the full deposit or have the holding fee if you don't want to split it proportionately between them. Once you have all tenants moving through the onboarding process, pause when you get to the tenancy agreement point. For the tenancy agreement, you're going to make a few small changes. First of all, the tenancy agreement shouldn't reference any specific tenant, but instead use the additional merge tag, which is COHO MISC other tenants. So we can see here, if we look inside the additional merge tags, the additional tenants here. Here you would write the names of each of the different tenants that are going to be on the tenancy agreement. You would then remove the merge tag related to the specific tenant's rent, and you would add the total rent in where that would be. You can generate the PDF, and you can then put it into something like DocuSign or Signable to get everyone to sign against that specific one, and then come back into here and add it as already signed. Or you can go through our COHO e-signing and have each tenant sign separately. Once confirmed, you will see that there is a receipt generated against each tenant, and the tenancy agreement will be identical between all of them. That's something you'll want to check, making sure you've got the merge tags correct. At that point, you can take the tenancy agreement and the signature page of each tenant, and you can combine them to get a final completed tenancy agreement signed by all people. And that's the end of the demonstration on how our onboarding process works. If you have any additional questions, you can always email support@coho.life and we'll get back to you with any answers there.